This is the Secure Cyber Connect podcast with Jay Adamson and Warren Atkinson, where we're joined by information, cybersecurity, technology and talent acquisition professionals who share their journeys, unique perspectives and offer advice and guidance. Our topics on this episode will be cybersecurity, inclusion, innovation and neurodiversity. Today we're thrilled to be joined by Jennifer Cox. Jennifer is a seasoned industry leader with over 19 years experience within the tech and cybersecurity industry and very much embodies both excellence and innovation within these sectors. Her expertise is widely held in high esteem amongst her peers, and as a director for Ireland at WiCyS for the UK and Ireland affiliate, Jennifer's impact reverberates globally. She's recognised as one of the PCR's top 25 women in tech and is also a Stevie Award recipient. Jennifer's dedication to diversity includes roles such as the ambassador for the Wentors International Mentoring Programme and reflects a commitment to nurturing the future of many cybersecurity leaders. With a passion for shaping and securing our digital future, Jennifer stands as a beacon of cybersecurity leadership and is committed to driving change and empowerment across the industry. Jennifer, welcome to the Secure Cyber Connect podcast and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks a million, Jay. I need to get you to introduce me when I walk into rooms and stuff. Cool. Oh, she's great. Whoa.
Well, we always start things off, Jennifer, with a few typically cursory questions in terms of what's inspired you to sort of join us today, a bit of a high-level overview of what we're going to discuss and really what our listeners should anticipate from the discussion.
Well, there's a couple of things for me that make me decide year and age these kind of things, and it's whether I trust the people that I'm going to speak to. And I've spent a lot of time on and off talking to Warren over the years about things that are not personally benefiting me, whether it's industry-based, how to be more inclusive, how to navigate those conversations and what the actions that he was doing and now that you're doing as well to help basically make that cybersecurity employment base better. So for me, that when you reach out and we're talking about this was like, absolutely, I would happily do. And then of course, I think any opportunity to talk about all the things that I love to talk about, which are everything that you mentioned there, the cybersecurity, neurodiversity, women in tech and cyber, all of that. I think we don't talk about it nearly enough. And the more I talk about it to people, the more I realize that people need to hear it. So the more people I encourage to talk about it then as well. So it just hopefully will snowball.
Well, we appreciate the fact you've come on to do exactly that today. And one of the things we always ask is for you to maybe share something that you're particularly proud of or excited about that may not be highlighted on your LinkedIn profile, for example.
Well, for me, I guess it's a really new project. So I have a bit of time at the moment, and I've always said if I ever have a bit of time, what I want to do is create a podcast and talk to people about their story. So there will be education within it around things like all of those topics that I talked about. But I think what I've learned over my years is listen to other people's stories, other people's experiences, their wins and losses helps me to understand better when I face those situations, either what to do, what not to do, or who to reach out to and things like that. So I now have an opportunity and I've created my own podcast called Lighting It Up. When you say with a Wexford accent, it's just lighting it up. And what I aim to do with that basically is to pick out people who have interesting stories to tell, whether it's career-based, life story-based, challenge-based, to do with neurodiversity and disabilities, and that I think other people can benefit from. So I launched that 6 days ago. The very first podcast episode came out. Second one will come out tomorrow. And I guess that's the thing I'm really most excited about right now, because I have the opportunity to do it. And my gosh, I might throw myself into that wholeheartedly. There's a big long list of pet projects that I want to do, but that's the first one on the list. So once I get that one under control, then we'll have more things to do.
Excellent.
And that's really exciting. I'm really looking forward to binging the first 10 episodes when they come out. So I do appreciate that. So, Jen, from your perspective, what one challenge did you perhaps face in your career that significantly influenced your perspective on cybersecurity?
I think for me, specific to my career, there were challenges that I didn't know I had. And when I found out that I had them, it was at the point of my career where I feel like I had things figured out. So they're like a hindsight challenge that I may have approached differently had I have known. And what I mean by that, for me, it is the neurodiversity side of it. Like I was diagnosed with ADHD at 43. I am 45 now. And even though I would have been compensating for a lot of the challenges around that, which I think you do naturally as any human being, like if your sight isn't great, you wear glasses. Like we compensate for these things where we can. I didn't know what I was compensating for. And I guess most importantly, I thought I was stupider than everybody else and just had to work so much harder to do the same as them. So when it came to cybersecurity, where that became even more of a challenge for me, well, firstly, in cybersecurity, everything moves damn fast, so fast. You have so much to learn. You have to keep on top of it all the time. So that upped the ante with regards working even harder again against that to keep on top of those things. And then the biggest challenge, which was a point for me that made me seek an assessment, was when I hit menopause and somebody just went thing and flipped that switch. And it became 10 times, 100 times worse, the symptoms of the ADHD side of it. And at the same time, I went into leadership in cybersecurity. So whilst it's challenging as an individual in cyber to keep up with all those gazillions of things that are happening and everything that's new on the market, when you become a leader, you have to be able to help everybody else do that. And then you take all of the psychological safety of all of your employees as well and their growth and what works best for them and what works best for the company and all then too, of course. But naturally you find yourself in things like no longer in 30-minute meetings or 1 hour meetings, you're in 2 hour meetings and 3 hour meetings, which if you've got ADHD, forget about it. Like I'm not going to remember anything. It was trying to figure out ways of manage that brought it to the fore for me. That and things like how I could structure my day was more so dictated by the needs of the team. And I really wanted to do a good job. And I felt that I had totally maxed out with regards overcompensating for trying to make everything I did, trying to meet the standard of everybody else, at least cognitively. So that when I found out, I saw an assessment, found out I had ADHD and cried like a baby because I was like, oh my God, I'm not stupid. And B, now that I understand it, I'm always very mechanical and logical in my way of thinking. But now that I understand it, that was half the battle because now I use the words to say, okay, I'm on your meeting for 3 hours, but if I color in at the same time, then it'll look like I'm taking notes to you, but it helps me because I'm doing this kind of motor function thing and I find it easier to concentrate on what you're saying. So I'm not going to be staring in your face, but I'm definitely listening to you if you see me intensely looking down like I'm making notes. It usually means that I'm doing that. And I didn't worry about saying that anymore. It was now validated. So for me, I think that may not have been, I may not have sought an assessment or I may not have looked for answers because I may not have had those challenges if I was in any other career, because I don't know of many other careers that move at the pace that ours does. So it just makes it even more of a challenge. Some would say there's a benefit to it if you like to do lots of different things. And I always used to say, I love that it changes so much I never get bored. Now I know why. And there's benefits to it as well. But certainly for anyone that's going into leadership in cybersecurity, you just add another layer onto it, which I love. I really wanted to do it right. That for me was the biggest challenge.
That makes sense. I appreciate you sharing that with us. And I'm sorry that you had to go through that. I'm glad that you're also the right end of it. Just curious, how did you go about getting tested? Was that sort of a peer that identified that? Was that something you wrote here back and did? What was the process there?
So I know there's a few different ways of people to do it. And I know Jay wants to ask me a question too. He's holding his breath. I can see it.
No, I'd be very keen to listen to this actually, because for many reasons actually, for my own personal reasons as well. To be fair, Jenny, so I'm keen to hear this.
So obviously the health service in Ireland is going to be different to the health service in the UK. But my brother was diagnosed in the UK and went through the NHS health service. And he was diagnosed before I was. So he walked me through the process. I assumed it would be the same here. So as I understand it with him, he was referred to the public health service in the UK. And it was during COVID, it took him about a year, 18 months to get an assessment. And I do know that those waiting lists have increased dramatically. But I spoke to somebody only last week who had requested an assessment in the UK and they were about 6 to 9 months before they'd get one. Now in Ireland, if you go through the regular GP process and get a referral, in my case, I waited for 3 years and nothing happened at all. So I went privately. And I know you can go privately in the UK too, which is just a really nice way of saying that you're going to pay through the nose for it. You find somebody to do it. You can get people that'll do it online. You can get people that'll do it in person. The main thing I would recommend is that if you're just looking for validation, it's often cheaper and easier to get an appointment with a psychologist. If you're potentially at any stage considering going down a medication route, then you have to get an assessment by a psychiatrist. Because if you get assessed by a psychologist and then choose to go down the medication route, you have to get reassessed by a psychiatrist. They're the only ones that can prescribe for what it's worth. Just for anyone doing it, I hate to see anyone burn money twice doing it. But yeah, I went ahead. I decided I was going to go for it anyway, regardless of what it cost. It was pretty expensive. In Ireland at the time, it was about €600. Now I think it's 800 for the same thing. It's gone up, demand. But most health insurances over here, private health insurance covers it. Whereas for my brother and some peers that went in the UK side of it that went private, the health insurance didn't cover it. So they didn't get anything back. Whereas my health insurance covered 75%. I've known somebody else cover 50%. And I know that's probably not what you're necessarily asking, but I know it's the question that people want to know the answer to. And it took, like, the assessment itself for me, it was 2 appointments. One where we go through all, like, you're given a whole lot of paperwork and questionnaires and things to fill out and assessments to do. With you do them yourself. I gave one to my partner. I gave one to my sister. I gave one to my parents so that they get an idea of what you were like when you were younger, growing up, and then as an adult as well. And I did one myself and gave it all back. You go through it and one. And then on appointment 2, typically is when they'll say, do you have ADHD or not? Sometimes they'll tell you like autistic tendencies, just almost everybody in my family has. Well, in my case, they told me on the first appointment. I'd say it was very clear to him how anxious I was about it. And also I remember a specific point in it, talking to him about my system and pointing out all this stuff in a notebook where I could see him kind of going, yeah. So it's really obvious when you look at it from the outside now, but not at the time. But once it was done and dusted, then I chose to move down the medication route because I'd seen such a massive relief in moving down the medication route with HRT for the menopause side. But for the record, I started early. So any poor woman that's out there at like 40 or 45, don't freaking out. We don't all start this early. I started about 30, says. So a big relief on that side. So I thought, maybe all medication isn't that bad, and tried this. And from day one, it was a game changer for me, for reducing anxiety, for helping to sleep, like all the things you couldn't possibly expect that kind of medication to work for, but it does for with ADHD. Quite simple. But that was the process for me, kind of in a nutshell. But I know that if people want to ask me questions about my experience or who I worked with and stuff, I'm always happy to answer them for anyone that wants to reach out. I'm usually easiest to contact on LinkedIn, and I talk to people about those things all the time. I am not a psychiatrist, and I cannot assess people. I have done some study in psychology, but I can talk about my experience and point them in the direction if that's what they want. I find ADHD in Ireland actually really good as well, and I know there's a UK variant, and the two are working together more now. Social groups online where people can talk to each other to understand what other people's backgrounds and experiences are like. And a lot of people go through things like a mourning period, the like you could have had when you realize that you have it. And
I've seen that with one of my very closest friends who's on medication for ADHD, and it's interesting because we're very similar characters. You then start having lots and lots of discussions. There's lots and lots of things that kind of come up, and then you start looking, and it's fascinating, and also it's been a game changer for him as well in many ways. But there's a lot of dotted lines to
so many
things.
Right? Absolutely worth it. I just find it really ironic when they ask like all the ADHDers to fill in forms, take medication on time, and attend things on schedule. I'm like, there's 3 things we're not good at. Like, we're not good.
So we're going to segue in sort of to, I guess, what you've been talking about and kindly shared with us, Jenny, with regards to your own experience. In terms of many neurodivergent individuals sort of feeling undervalued in the workplace and looking for sort of more support, it's clear that supporting neurodiversity is becoming more and more crucial. What are some of the best practices for creating an inclusive environment that would maybe effectively support neurodivergent employees? And do you have any specific sort of success stories where you've seen where neurodiversity has enhanced team performance and maybe driven innovation?
There is a good few of these things. So when it comes to like best practices or what can you do best, instinctively, and you'll even find people in the neurodiverse community will say to you to ask people what do they want. And as somebody who was asked, what do they want? Like I told my boss, he knew I was getting the assessment. I told him when I got the assessment that I was found to have ADHD. And he goes, well, what can we do to support you? What do you want? And I instinctively went, I have no idea. I've managed, like, I've never had anything to help before. What is there? So that I feel, and a lot of people would agree, it's kind of mixed. The best way to do it is almost to approach people with some suggestions of what can be done and let them pick from it, especially if they're diagnosed as an adult. If they've been diagnosed all of their life, they probably already know what it is that works for them. They've only just been diagnosed as an adult. They're going through that mourning period. They're going through figuring everything out and understanding what they need. They may not necessarily already know what they've been using as a coping mechanism. It could be something as simple as noise cancelling earphones in the office, or sitting in a corner where somebody doesn't walk up behind you, which really bothers most humans, I think, anyway, but just that the environment that they're in. It could also be things like, I used to always say to my boss, like, if you're sending me stuff, try and send it in bullet points. Don't send it in paragraphs. I'll read the first sentence, but I read it all. I'm just not going to remember the rest of it. I'll pick out the key points. Like, if you send me bullet points, it's like a checklist. I know to tick it off and make sure that I've done it. But I did once, for fun, because I was going through redoing the kind of recruitment process in the last place that I worked. So I went through some interviews with places like Google and Atkinson to see what their interview processes are like, because some of the best ideas are stolen from somewhere else. And when I went through it with Google, they work with a company in the UK. I can't remember what they're called now, but they support any company like that, really. It's like a not-for-profit in the UK that worked with them. So they said, if you need any adjustments, reasonable adjustments made, let us know. I could email this address so that the recruiter and the people that were hiring didn't know that I needed anything. So I kept it private and I could ask for stuff. And they basically said to me, what do you want? Or would you like us to send you a list? Send me the list. And they sent me a list of things like, during the interview process, could add on an extra 15 minutes for the interview to allow that basically the cognitive process. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer for us. We're listening and concentrating so hard on the social cues to take on board what's actually being said, or to copy paste the questions into the chat if you're doing a Zoom call, or to allow somebody time to kind of use a worksheet or to write notes before answering it, which are things that would be typically socially awkward that would go against you on an interview if they didn't know that those requests were in place to have them. So in that case, I would say that the best practices would be to already determine what you are facilitating for people. And if not, then reach out to those not-for-profit groups that are everywhere, like ADHD Ireland and ADHD UK. And I think it's like Innovation UK or something. I'll find out the name and I'll send it to you. But they'll give you a list of things that are good suggestions. And 99 times out of 100, they cost you nothing but a little bit of thought and effort. And the benefit I've seen to those, so once I discovered that what it was with me, and I had already a lot of mechanisms in place, I was managing a team. And I used to it's little things, like I had neurodivergence on my team as well, and they were very different from each other. And so with some of them, it was a case of they'll just work their day however, as long as the stuff is getting done. I didn't really care if they started on the dot of 9 or if they started at 10 and then picked up some stuff in the evening, whatever worked then. Also, things like if they were getting a bit overwhelmed, I used to check in with them regularly. I had one that wouldn't tell you anything about what was going on and one that was a really good communicator. So I'd check in with the one that would say nothing and go, hey, how you getting on? You all right? The workload okay? Do you need a hammer or anything? Shall I dip in and help? And only because I asked, then he would say like, yeah, actually, I need a hand weight, or no, I'm doing fine. And I'd remind him to take a break and step away because we don't remember to eat and do those kind of things when we get all in growth. And whereas the other one was very good at communicating and would go, feeling a bit stressed. And I'd be like, grand, off you go for a walk with the dog, help in the garden, get somewhere, and give me a shout when you're good to go again. And just that little bit of breathing room, which really all of those things could be put in place for anyone in your team. That's not even exclusive to neurodivergence, but a neurodivergent, or shouldn't speak for all of me as a neurodivergent, I wouldn't always ask for those things. But if my boss opened a discussion about it, then I'd feel comfortable asking for it because I know that it's okay to. It saves conversation. But for me,
quite a lot of what I've mentioned is focusing on that support network and having that transparency, trying and gaining trust with your peers, not just sort of internally within an organization, but part of a community or space.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to I think in order to lead people well, you need to show that you're human. So you have to show a level of vulnerability then as well. So whether that is that you talk about that your child is sick or your dog is being a pain in the backside, which mine often is. So he's hiding downstairs somewhere, so you can hear him today. But in my case, I talked openly about the assessment. So then they asked questions, and it was through my assessment that I found out about them and their neurodivergency. I didn't know about it before that because they didn't know they could talk to me about it until I started talking more openly about it. And then they found out through me and the people I was talking to, such as my boss and such, who else in the company was a safe space to go to. Like we hosted an introduction basically to ADHD and autism. So an explanation of neurodiversity and a webinar with Lexi. And normally when we do these, we did it as part of the ERG. So I set up an ERG in Tenable called Diverse Ability at Tenable, which is for people that were neurodiverse or disabilities. So I organized this webinar with Lexic, and they're I think they're not for profit, but they're a UK group as well. But they basically talked about what all those acronyms meant and how you could support your peers and your employees that have it in the highest level, kind of simplest terms. Normally, when we did events like that, we might get 150 people that would register, maybe 100 that would arrive for any of the ERGs. We had over 400 people turn up for this webinar. And at the time, we had just over about 2,500 employees worldwide. So take the time zone that couldn't attend it out of it. That's a pretty good, solid number. And I talked about the fact that I was diagnosed for a few minutes in the beginning, which made them feel like this was coming from a good place and they could trust the information that they were given, which was the intention. And afterwards, and even now, I still have people that reach out to say they've been assessed, that they have always had it, that they're thinking about being assessed, or that they know somebody everybody that was on it knew somebody who was affected by it. But they were all trying to figure out, even though the company openly supported people that needed it. And when you hear the company line versus hearing a human being saying, hey, I got a sense, 50 years been health insurance, my boss has been great, that's different. They're hearing a real life story and they know they can trust other people then. So they ask me the questions too. And, that's where the vulnerability and the humanity comes into it. And that's where my people then learned that my money where my mouth is as such. That I meant every word I was saying when it came to support.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely in there. That's where we're seeing success, especially with security and business, even boards at the moment in terms of the collaboration, is when there's that transparency. It wouldn't a human relationship, and that's achieved by them actually lowering their barriers. They're showing what their challenges are. And more often than not, that sometimes resonates with the other individual. So, Jenny, just curious to gain your perspective in terms of the strategies that are most effective for retaining women in technology and security, also in terms of fostering career development. Sure.
When it comes to the strategies for retaining women, and I guess it could be extended to any diverse group too, it's not as complicated as people make it seem, right? So let's say, for example, I would often help understand when WiCyS are involved in any cybersecurity event, whether it's across the UK and Ireland. And I've been on the stand on both sides of it. And we've often had people come up to us and go, oh my God, I work for XYZ company and they're great. They're so supportive. They do this, they do that, they do whatever. But we just can't get women applying for jobs there. And I'll open up their page of their website and I'll go down to the page of the website and I'll go, funny, because nowhere on your entire website does it give me any indication that you would be supportive of. I remember speaking to Amazon and having a similar conversation about this and saying to them, do you ever post people stories about the people that work at Amazon? I want to know if you have somebody who has a disability, I want to know how they feel about it as an employee of Amazon, how they're catered for. And they won't do that for the brand if they don't feel supported. In the same way that I've often done videos like that, Tenable, about my experience personally. I've never done it with a script, with what I've been told to say, because that's just not who I am. I wouldn't do that anyway. But I've often volunteered to do it. And some companies do that. And guess what? They're the companies that never have any problem getting people to apply. More importantly, it's their employees talk about it. I've worked for companies that are rubbish, that are toxic, that don't support women. You don't hear me talking about those ones. You'll hear me talking about the ones that have supported me along the way, because that's what we do. And I find certainly among the women that I know and the women that are in the networks across WiCyS and other tech networks, that's what we stand by the most. It's less about how we want people to see us. It's how there's like this pre-established trust that, if I say to a lady, and I may never have spoken to her before, I'm thinking of applying for a job in your company. It looks really great. Any chance you give me 10 minutes on a call where I can just pop quiz you about it, hear about your experience? And when I do, that woman is absolutely, definitely not going to lie to me on that call about her experience. It's just an unwritten rule. I don't know who decided it, but it works. Like, they're not going to. They're going to tell me the truth. They may not want to diss the company, but I'm going to know if they feel comfortable and supported there. I can ask questions if they're not giving me the information, but generally in less than 10 minutes, I'll get it back. That's the best advertising any company can have for increasing the diversity within their company and within any of their sister companies or partners and things like that then as well. It's worth so much more than any kind of marketing and advertising that's out there. And what was the second part of that? It was to do with bringing them in and then...
Yeah, so in terms of how you can, what strategies can organizations or individuals use to foster growth, with career growth within the industry, so developing their career paths?
The career growth is an interesting one. So for me, what I tend to do, if I was looking at a different company to go to tomorrow, I'd make it my business to find out how far up the chain they have a consistent number of women. And in some companies, you'll see plenty of them as individual contributors or maybe as lower level managers. And sometimes you'll see them on the board as well, but you'll see them missing from senior management. That always smells funny to me. Or if you see them maybe only as middle and upper management and lead roles, then why aren't they at the ground level? You don't really see that. I'm just thinking about that. I don't really know. But you'll see it the other way around, where you'll see them an individual contributor, maybe junior management, and then nowhere else up from there. That tells me a lot. So when I'm looking at career development going into a company, that's kind of important to me that I see that consistency throughout if I want to stay with that company and if they want me to stay with that company. Because without that, what I see is that I can become a middle manager, or maybe I'm at a kind of a senior manager now. So if I was going in there, do I see people that are going up from that, or am I just going to be a senior manager for a couple of years and then go somewhere else and do that? So if companies want to retain people, they want to have evidence of showing that there is a career path for women and that they're in roles that matter and stay there, that they're not being brought in as token hires, which we still see sometimes now, which is an insult to both those women and to everybody else around me. It's stupid. We can see the token hires a mile away, but you have to have that consistency. And to me, the most impressive ones are the ones that have had career growth within the company. So if I'm looking at a company that has just, 500 employees, I want to go back, look at the ones that are higher up and go back through their career growth and see if any of them have gone up through that company to that level. Then that's it. That's a really golden egg in that case, because they've shown and proven to put their money where their mouth is and support the talent they've seen, regardless of how they identify as such from there.
I think it's really important that organizations have that compelling story to share with communities and underrepresented groups, for instance. Appreciate you sharing that.
No worries.
I kind of feel that sort of almost answered a similar question really to the next one, if I'm being honest, Jenny. I think that sort of probably has sort of taken the same rules apply really within the diversity within the cybersecurity piece, I guess. So moving into sort of in terms of boosting talent retention.
Yeah.
How do you feel many organizations can maximize the impact of employee resource groups, or ERGs as they're known, and support their diversity objectives, maybe enhance their overall employee engagement? Maybe shine a light on some proven methods that you're aware of that, again, have helped to integrate these and ensure that they have driven that meaningful change and contributed to the overall business's success.
Sure. I think that the key thing when it comes to ERGs is to listen. I love to simplify things. I worked in support for years and years, and I've worked with people who don't understand the acronyms. And I taught my mother everything she knows about computers, and she was never particularly savvy. So I think everything should make sense to everyone at every level. So when you talk about things like retention, to me, it is as simple as listening. So I used to run the Women Attainable ERG and then set up the Diversibility one at Attainable 2. And what we set out to do from the very beginning was to understand what people that were members of that ERG, whether they were, when it was the women one, whether they were male or female, they could be members of the ERG. And in the Diversibility, the same. They didn't have to be neurodivergent. They didn't have to have a disability. They just had to be supported from it. But we would talk to them about what they want to see. Do you want to have, bingo sessions and parties and happy hours, or do you want information sessions and support groups that are brought in? Do you want things changed in the rules and regs of the company? Like, what is it exactly that you want to see happen? And then almost like politics, then I would see my role in the ERG as being the implementer, or at least the instigator of what it is that they want. I mean, sometimes you're not going to change how a company runs entirely, but you're going to start those conversations on behalf of people. That's my role. What tends to happen a lot, I think, especially with ERGs, is that's what they were originally brought out to integrate people better, and to kind of identify that there was a need for people to have these support groups, as opposed to putting them on a kind of a pedestal to be admired from a distance. Like, it was a support group. Everybody likes to know that there's somebody like them around that they can communicate with. But more and more, as they become more of a hype thing, certainly over the last 10 years or so, they've become all about happy hours and parties, which is great. You still need those things for socializing as well and getting together. But you can have your happy hours and parties as long as the members of your ERG feel like you're dealing with the core asks on their behalf as well. So not everybody who's in an ERG wants to be an active member, wants to be at the forefront of whatever campaign it is that you're running. But that doesn't mean that they don't want to be represented, or that they don't have an opinion, or don't have a say, or shouldn't have a say about something. If they all have big objections to, I don't know, the types of leave that are made available by the company, or how that leave is broken up, maybe for parental leave or adoptive leave or something like that, say, and they want that to be discussed and changed, then it would be my job to raise it and to discuss it. I can't change it, but I can raise it and discuss it and act on their part. So it's almost more political than anything else. But if we have everything we want and everybody's super, super happy, and all they want to do is get together with more people that are like them once a month, once a quarter, and have some beers, then great. But you have to be prepared as an ERG to look after the actual needs of all of those people, and you to represent them. That's the whole job.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, Jenny, can you share with us what the best strategies recruitment teams can use to increase diversity, especially within cybersecurity roles, ensuring that the hiring process itself is actually an inclusive one?
For me, I think it's visibility on the recruitment side. And I don't just mean like marketing and saying all the right things. I've been to events and talks and been involved in webinars and podcasts and conferences and such, and seeing recruitment partners at those kind of things makes a big deal of a difference. But also seeing their employees independently attend these things. I mean, I know as a recruitment employee, often you get blacklisted from a lot of those events. Nobody wants to see you at it because they're afraid you're going to be there poaching people and making it a different kind of a vibe. And that's not everybody's fault. It's the usual thing. It's the person who put the cat in the microwave is the reason we have a warning on the microwave. Do you know, there's always somebody that has to ruin it for everybody else. That was a really bad example.
You're channeling your gremlins, your gremlins create these movies.
But it's the same idea. Like I anytime I've ever met a recruitment person at an event, we usually are chatting for a bit before they'll finally admit that they're a recruitment person, because I guess they realize that what we're talking about is to do with diversity, and it's not about me looking for a job or them looking for me for a job. It's about making changes. And then I'm interested to hear what they're doing with regards to representing diverse groups. And what I've seen across recruitment agencies, much like yours, is things like conversations about how you're challenging employers who are bringing you on board, and they start saying, I want X, Y, and Z. And I'm sure that it happens when they say that they don't want people of a certain age, or they don't want people of a certain background, or they do want everyone to tick all the boxes and they want to pay them pennies for doing it. I'm under no illusions. Not everybody is fair out there. So really, I think knowing that recruitment companies have those conversations is just really hard for people to advertise that they do it. But that ethically they're catering for the right things. So things like this, even having a podcast like this puts out to the world that you're interested in having these conversations. There's a lot of recruitment companies out there that just stay quiet and spend all their time making candidates feel crappy to make them squeeze into these underpaid, undervalued roles for people who can't get real recruitment companies to actually take their business. So it happens, like the word gets around very quickly about recruitment agencies, whether they're supporting those groups or not. And I think through your actions is the way to do it best. definitely seeing you guys at events, especially community events where you can sponsor, I don't know, stands or the loot bags or whatever it is that's there. That says a lot about any company, but it certainly says a lot about a recruitment company that's working in the industry then too.
Always.
Yeah, you have organizations and individuals and sort of weed out who those bad apples potentially could be. Our salary guidance, for instance, which can be found on the Secure-Recruitment website, is focused on highlighting the disparity between genders across the security domain. And we share that a lot with a lot of our partners. Sometimes they're embarrassed and sometimes they're thankful. But you put it out there so that individuals can also see that as well. We hope that transparency is going to drive change.
And you're talking about it, which means that if there's people coming to you who don't align to those values, they're going to know that it's not going to work, or that you're going to want to correct them or educate them on the right and best way to do things. So they have to go somewhere, and they're going to go to the ones who don't care about it. But what you're going to do is attract the people who do want, either already do or intend to put those values in place then as well. And I think I've seen it more and more over maybe the last 10 years or so, that it's become more and more important for companies to align to recruitment agencies that do. It's less about the money and it's more about that alignment of values, so they can trust recruiters to go out and find the candidates in the most responsible and ethical way and look for the right kind of people, encourage them to come on board without breaking any rules or telling any lies. And that's what matters. When you talk about things like that on your site, it says a lot. Like, some people might go, you just printed a report. No, like I said, people like me, if we're looking for stuff and looking for roles in other companies, they're exactly the kind of things that we'll spot and we'll go, hang on now, they're pointing out these statistics and around diversity, which means that they must have at least some interest in it and helping out with it. So they might be on my side and I'll look at what either working with or applying through them. Like, that's exactly how it goes. And women, for sure, absolutely 100%, don't just apply for the jobs, as we know well. They talk to the people, go through all the websites, check all the LinkedIn profiles, and then apply for the jobs. So it makes a big difference.
That makes sense. And I want to commend you and the wider team in terms of the brilliant work they're doing with WiCyS and their noted members, and they sort of develop their career because the support that you've shown is a sort of broader community. For our listeners that perhaps don't have understanding of WiCyS and what they do, what's the primary initiative there, and how do you support women entering the industry, as well as those that are perhaps already in there looking to develop their careers?
So WiCyS is a global community, and that stands for Women in Cybersecurity. And it started in the US, but has moved out across Europe and Asia as well. And I think it's everywhere now. But they began sort of supporting students that wanted to go into the cybersecurity industry, or graduates, or maybe even returners at the time. But they have professional affiliates now as well. I think there is, at last count, there were 72 professional affiliates, but there's probably been more since then. That was March. And I work on a voluntary basis with the UK&I professional affiliate, and I look after the Irish Islands side of things. But because I go to and fro between the UK and Ireland all the time, it made sense to be a part of that. There was no kind of group in Ireland that was really actively doing anything. So when we started first, I think we had about 200 members that were kind of, it was all very passive, I guess. And that was maybe not even 2 years ago. Now we're heading towards 800 members across both islands as such. And we are partnering with lots of different companies to hold meetups and webinars and training that we're offering to our members. So the affiliate is free to join. Anyone can join it who's got an interest in cybersecurity, either going into it, coming back to it, was in it, has been in it for years, doesn't really matter. They can all join it and it's free to join it. Joining the global one is only, I think it's like $95 to join for the year. For a professional, like $20 for a student. So it's really super cheap. And again, there's lots of training and such. So global partners with big companies like Amazon and Google and all the big names. So there's often Google scholarships and such that they'll dish out during the year. They're running a bunch of scholarships at the moment, boot camps, mentorship programs, everything. Then we do ours on a regional basis as such. So we're working on a partnership now with training, another one for with technical training, another one for management training. We just had a meetup in the TikTok offices in Dublin. We're about to have a meetup this week in the Morgan McKinley offices in Cork on the Irish side. We have a meetup in the Shard on Thursday this week as well. We figured we'd have the meetups in the 2 different countries on the same day to make it a little bit more kind of sticky, I guess. We all feel like we're all out together at the same night. So, and I believe all the tickets for the Shard one are gone, saying a few left on the Morgan McKinley one. We oversold, took another few in extra for the TikTok one. So there's a demand and an interest out there for sure for women to get together and network and talk. And I mean, even in the WhatsApp groups that we have, so when people join us, we add them into WhatsApp groups based on their region, but they can join all of them. They're not limited to the region. But even seeing the conversations going, like we've seen everything from, I think, can somebody look at my CV and help me out? Where am I going wrong here? To I'm studying this course, or I've got an opportunity to study this course or this course. Which one will I do? There's lots of advice in there. And because we've got such a high industry base in our group, then it's even more beneficial for anyone that's kind of new or graduate coming into it. And you can really ask anything because it's just a bunch of women that work in the industry. We're not selling anything. We're not touting anything. We're just sharing information among each other and making friends, really. And it's been a lifeline for sure for most of us, I think, this stage.
No, incredibly important.
And how can both individuals and organisations perhaps support WiCyS in terms of your mission to foster a greater inclusion and diversity, especially within obviously the cyber field?
So there's a WiCyS.org site, which is the global one, and in that you'll find the affiliate that's closer to you, whoever you are and wherever you're listening to this from. On the UK and I one, we have ours, so of course alphabetically that puts near the bottom of the list somewhere. But you can get in touch with us from there. We also have a LinkedIn page. Find me on LinkedIn. All you need to do is search for WiCyS, WiCYS, and you'll find tons of them. Just find the one that's closest to you and get in touch. What I have found, like we've partnered with other WiCyS groups. We're working on a webinar series with WiCyS Kenya, I think it is. I'm going over to speak at Women for Cyber in Amsterdam in October to partner with him on that. Like, so we don't just stick to our own countries too. Like the network extends beyond where we're at because often the roles extend beyond the countries that we're in as well. So anyone that wants to get involved, what we love to do more than anything else is to get together socially. And those kind of things don't cost a whole lot of money for businesses to do. And we'll share, like we'll market it between us and them. And usually we'll get anything from 20 people together in a room to 100 people together in a room. Typically we'll even for the speakers for it because there's always women in the group that want to speak more or practice their speaking. So we'll do a panel or put a couple of speakers in and keep it pretty relaxed. Use snacks, couple of cans of Coke. We're easily amused. And a couple of hours. So really it's the space that we need. And we'll get together as often as those spaces are offered to us. And that seems to snowball in from there. Like there's a lot of good can be done when you put a lot of women in tech in one room.
That sounds brilliant. And I think you've cultivated a safe environment for people to sort of learn to shell and develop, which is really, really important. To commend you all there.
And looking at some collaborative mentality and obviously coupling that with effective leadership, how can leaders cultivate more of a culture of that continuous learning and adaptability, and especially, of course, within the cybersecurity teams? We know that there's rapidly evolving threats coming thick and fast. Where are the strategies that these leaders can sort of employ to build and maintain that trust internally and, of course, with their clients? And I guess more pertinently after a security breach or an incident.
So you mean around training your teams or just, yeah. So I would find that lead by example is the way that I like to go the most. I wouldn't expect anyone in my team to be at a standard that I don't think I could be at or capable of doing. And what I mean there is around the volume of information I should be expected to regurgitate at any one given time. So I've often found myself going to speak about something that I haven't either spoke about in years. I have to go back and learn all over again, or about new things that are happening, almost always about new things that are happening in cybersecurity. So I have to make it my business to know enough about it. If you're going to speak about it, you don't want to be caught short by not knowing anything about it. But what I'll aim to do is to focus on things I'm interested in. And I think allowing people in your team to choose what they want to study that way. So like we always had a grant that we could use in Tenable to study, and we were given a lot of freedom around what we used that grant for. So I know a lot of people who would be given a grant to study in their workplace, but they have to do something that's very specifically within the role that they're doing and even within the industry But what I would have done, like I studied design thinking 1 year using my grant. I mean, that's got anything to do with cybersecurity, but it taught me really well how to simplify things, how to simplify ideas, processes, programs, products, and how to simplify like meetings and delivery. That I'm not sure that's what the course is often intended for you to design products. But in my case, a lot of it's transferable, and I use that for approaching the way that I'm managed in a different way. Do you know? But I could study it because I could study whatever I wanted. It's all about personal growth. And I think people will work harder for you when they feel valued and respected and given room to breathe and room to grow. I know that I would always aim to support the individual. So if their growth means that they're going to leave my team or possibly even leave my company, their growth is still the priority. We'll do all the best we can for the company in the meantime, make sure that they work hard. But if they feel I've got their back for their ultimate goal, then I'm going to get the best out of them from there. So when it comes to things like the cybersecurity part, you have to be realistic. You can't expect somebody to actually know everything there is to know, whether it's all about the kinds of attacks or whether it's all about the kinds of technology. But what you can do is very quickly identify what they're going to be good at, what they're willing to learn, and then what they're also interested in that's not their job. And if you can support all three of those things, they'll do all three of those, and you'll find that they'll actually do more because they're valued enough and happy enough to be able to relax and do more. So you're taking like the stress energy away and allow them to put the energy into something else. And that's probably the best way I can explain it. I'm not really sure it's that clear, but I've seen it personally. Like, yeah.
And I guess from a leadership perspective also, so looking at that externally, how do you feel that these strategies are best implemented with clients, say, after maybe a crisis or a security breach?
But I think when it comes to clients, it has to be about helping them to firstly get over it, to recover from whatever the breach has been. And then once you've done that, to do a review of what's happened. Basically, you want to go through and see where the issue was, what could have been done better, and what needs to be done in the future. But it has to be done with both best practices and human perspectives so that they can understand that your goals and intentions for them are that they are doing the best for their business. Inevitably, people are going to want to sell you stuff. And usually the people that you're going to be having that conversation with also want to sell you stuff. But I've never been one to try and sell anybody stuff they don't want or need. Which I know that sounds daft, but it happens. Imagine it. But I think at the core, they need to understand that it's not about blame. Everybody is at risk of and likely to be attacked in some way, shape, or form at some point in their lives. And the sooner we accept that, the easier it is to move forward. What you need to do is make sure that they feel like they can move forward from it, that it's not about blaming people, that it's about identifying where it went, fixing it, getting up and running, identifying where it went wrong, and then helping them to understand what they need to put in place to prevent that kind of thing from happening again and anything similar from happening again. And all of that can only be done if you build trust with your client there. And I think the trust is built by wanting to help them regardless of whether there's a deal at the end of it or not. Wanting to help them because it's the right thing to do. And if you're actually all about good practices when it comes to cybersecurity, then the deal is secondary to that. The deals will happen if that's your focus. If your focus is about doing the right thing when it comes to cybersecurity for people, rest will happen. But I think that humans can see that a mile away. They can tell and what your motive is. And mine has only ever been to help them do a good job around cybersecurity.
I think more outcome organizations perhaps enhance their resilience more as opposed to try to sell them a golden bullet solution so that we're going to make use of impenetrable, which we all know there are a lot of organizations out there that claim that, unfortunately.
With regards to your engineering background, Jenny, I mean, as an accomplished engineering leader, you obviously have extensive experience within sort of scaling teams and you've worn many hats. Would you say some of the sort of common pitfalls you've encountered within engineering security practices that teams should try and avoid during sort of scaling up and growth periods?
I think there's a tendency for people to think that you can scale at the same volume that you can sell. And it's very naive to think that. You want to start thinking about efficiencies and best practices and how you can do more with less. It was the phrase that we always used to like. And it's not about doing the job by doing more with less. there's absolutely, definitely a better, more efficient way of doing the thing that you're doing right now in the long term. There's going to be things that are noisy that you can do. There's going to be smart places to use things like AI. There's going to be places where you can bundle up certain parts of the role to people who maybe aren't as technical, and things that don't need to be done that aren't as technical by the technical people. So I think when it comes to scaling up your teams, you need to not do a like for like math about how that's going to work and see how more efficient you can be with the numbers that you want to bring in. When it comes to the technical side of things, I think what you needed for in a security engineer, our security engineers ultimately they were sales engineers. I think they're called solutions engineers even now. But what they would have been, the job they would have done 2 years ago is different to the job that they're doing now. And it's going to be different to the job that they're doing in 2 years' time. And that may be unique to the cybersecurity side of things. And probably a couple of other industries, or certainly in tech, that it aligns to as well. But you need to reevaluate it often in order to be able to identify what the role actually needs to be. And it's not all about penny pinching and scrimping back on things in order to make more money. It's about efficiency, and it's about making sure that people are focused on the right things. Just spending 30% of their time doing nonsense work. Either ditch the nonsense work or find a different person to do it. But they've got skills that are needed, skills that are valuable, and skills that they've spent years of their life building up. They're the ones that we need to be used, and then not typical skills that can be done by any other person.
I think we've asked all of our guests, or certainly most of our guests, with regards to effective communication. We love an analogy at CyberConnect. We know there's many analogies used within the industry. Would you have a particular go-to analogy for simplifying technical concepts? And as an aside question, what's your favorite analogy in general, if you can use it on the podcast?
I can use a variant of it. When it comes to the tech side of things, I normally use the phrase like, speak to me like I'm a 4-year-old, because I don't mean it in a patronizing way. I always think if a child or somebody who is not technical savvy can understand the point that I'm trying to get across, then everybody else can understand it. There is absolutely no need to acronymize, if it even is a word, everybody to death. And often I found people using acronyms all the time, and then when you really push them on it, they don't know what it means either. But, I spent the earlier part of my career, because I wasn't trained in tech. I was trained in theatre and psychology. So everything I learned, I had to break it down into a way of understanding it that I could explain it in a different way to people who knew nothing about tech. We worked a lot supporting people in retail and accountancy and stuff like that. And I had to make it make sense then. But that doesn't always happen. You'll get people that work in highly technical roles, and they just assume everybody else understands what they're talking about. So yeah, speak to me like I'm a 4-year-old is probably the one that I will use a lot more often. But the one I use for my day to day is around, and especially through mentoring, something that comes up a lot, especially with women, is the feeling intimidated by someone who's going to hire you, interview you, who's your leadership, management, male or female, it doesn't. And I always say, I'll not use the word I normally use, but I say they have to eat like the rest of us, basically.
Sure.
And I'm like, it sounds really crude, but at the end of the day, they have to do their laundry, and they have to clean their floors, and they have to wipe spit off their baby's chins. All the same things that the rest of us have to do. And because their title says they're a VP of something or they're a CEO of something, doesn't mean that they don't have to do the very same basic things that the rest of us have to do. And what I've learned is that they also feel like they stop for a second or look over their shoulder, someone's going to call them out for being a fraud too. Those feelings go up the cheek with everybody else.
Humanize them.
Exactly. And as soon as I learned that, I can't remember exactly when that happened, but as soon as I learned that nobody intimidated me, and it doesn't matter. Like, their heartbeats like mine, they all gonna die like I'm gonna die at some day. Like, but that's all that matters at the end of the day. And if somebody's going to try and make me feel small because they've got a title that they think makes them bigger than I do, then it makes a really quick decision for me about where I spend my time and energy. So it just, humanizing them is absolutely it. And that's just the phrase I use because usually people remember it. It's a variant of the phrase I use.
So Jenny, we've covered some fascinating topics today, from the challenges that you face to the strategies you've utilised to overcome them. So what does the future hold for both yourself and WiCyS?
Well, I think for the WiCyS side of things, we are growing so fast. And we went from a panel of volunteers of about 17 last year to 52 active volunteers this year. They're just the ones that are involved in doing stuff that are not just members as well. So from strength to strength, I think on that side of things, really the sky's the limit, because we can actually do just about anything we want. And WiCyS at Global are super supportive and behind us in it. So it's only down to the limitations of the people outside of us, really, and how involved they want to be, because I genuinely think that being involved with a group like ours is the way forward from here. So yeah. And then for me, I don't know. Outside of WiCyS, I don't know. Whatever. Well, I'm going to do the podcast now for a bit. Maybe I'll write a book, who knows? But I don't think anything's off limits. I think I've got plenty of time. Still got a good 20 years of work left in me. So I've got plenty of time to try new things. And people say these days that you would you would typically have up to 3 different careers in your lifetime now. There's none of this, I only do one thing and do it forever. So who knows?
Yeah, that's brilliant. I'm really looking forward to the next episodes that are coming out. Now, for our listeners that want to perhaps connect with you beyond the Secure Cyber Connect community, where else can they hear from you and essentially reach out to you in terms of being able to contact you?
Cool. So best place to get me is always going to be on LinkedIn. And I think it's Jennifer M on LinkedIn, but I'm easy enough to find. And yeah, that's the one I'm probably the most active on. I do have a YouTube channel for Lighting It Up as well, which is Lighting It Up JC. But the podcast is Lighting It Up, where you can find it on just about any podcast platform now. I've finally got them all to work. So yeah.
Well, Jennifer, thank you. You've been great. And I'm sure the community and all our listeners will have found a lot of value in today's session. If anyone wants to continue the discussion and for some more sustained engagement, as always, we invite you to join the Secure Cyber Connect community, where we're offering a range of collaborative solutions for both technology and security professionals at no cost. These will include expansive community access, cross-sector mutual mentoring programs, weekly online networking sessions, and a range of upcoming exclusive interviews, panel discussions, and masterclasses. If you want to learn more and gain access to the Secure Cyber Connect community and any of our initiatives, please visit secure-recruitment.com/cyber-connect/. Thank you.